take a honeymoon to the sun. Run it back like you and I just begun. Take my hand and suddenly I come undone. Ease my mind whenever it's on the run. You didn't pick the stars out from the sky, so I could always see a starry night. You gave me the world with just your time. That's what I learned.
All right, I've been dying to make this video because I have officially switched from the Sony A7CR to the Nikon ZR as my hybrid travel camera. Let's get right into it. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Desmond, and no, this video is not clickbait. I did, in fact, make the switch from the A7CR to the Nikon ZR as my one and done go-to travel hybrid camera. And there's a few reasons for that, which we'll talk about in this video. I'll walk through image quality, form factor, the performance I saw during my entire 2-week trip to Hong Kong, Singapore, and Taiwan, where I only brought the Nikon ZR, and why I feel really comfortable just leaving this at home from now on. First, we'll start off by saying that Nikon did not sponsor this video. They never sent me a pre-production model. I never got to test it. Before the pre-release, I, like many of you, just watched a ton of YouTube videos, did a lot of research, and I made the decision to purchase this for myself. And then I spent an extensive amount of time only using this camera and testing it exactly the way I would be using any hybrid camera when I travel. So one of the first reasons is actually I have mostly switched from being a 50-50 or even photo heavy user to a video heavy user. Where the A7CR was fantastic was that 61 megapixel sensor, the mechanical shutter, the photos coming out of this thing were fantastic and allowed me a lot of cropping power. When I travel now, am mostly doing video work. Yes, the ZR can do fantastic photos. I'll show you a lot of examples as well, but the video capabilities on this camera are one of the big reasons why I made the switch. Not that the CR was a slouch, also fantastic video quality, but what I'm able to get out of this is, in my opinion, infinitely better for my use case and the type of videos and content that I want to make. Secondly, it's going to come down to form factor. I think one of the trade-offs that I actively make is that this is a larger camera than my A7CR. They are both, of course, designed with different purposes. This is very much specifically designed as a compact travel camera for daily use. This still designed to be compact, but definitely not as small. But when it comes to form factor, one of the reasons why I'm okay sacrificing a few, millimeters or maybe even an inch of size is this massive 4-inch screen. Like I mentioned, as more of a 60/40 video photo user now, this screen is incredible. Yes, I lose the viewfinder, but I mean, shooting video or even photos with this massive 4-inch screen, it's so hard to go back to something so tiny. It is worlds apart in terms of difference. And when you're really out there filming, shooting, and just kind of like on the go, this changes the experience so dramatically that I don't think I can go back to something this small. The other reason I made the switch, and hopefully you'll notice, is I can still use all of my Sony lenses. So no, I am not completely abandoning the Sony ecosystem. I am simply abandoning the A7CR. I'm still filming this on a Sony FX3, which is my primary studio camera, which I love. I can still use all of my Sony lenses. I'm using the Megadap E to Z mount. It's so thin, it's like there isn't even adapter on here. So when I was traveling through Hong Kong, Singapore, and Taiwan, I was using the 16mm f1.8G, as well as my 35mm f1.4G Master. And those were the only two lenses I brought on this entire trip to get a combination of my B-roll, talking head, photos, all of that good stuff. So primarily Sony lenses. I don't personally love Nikon lenses. I think they're big. I will probably stick with Sony glass because I still have a few Sony cameras in my lineup. And maybe that is cheating a little, right? It's like I'm not officially switching my entire ecosystem, but the fact that the ZR can use Sony glass is a huge plus for me. And again, makes it a very, very easy purchasing decision. Because this thing was, what, maybe $2,200 body only before tax? That's incredible for its capabilities. Now, speaking of capabilities, let's talk about image quality, the photo, the video modes, and all the other reasons why I switched to this as my main hybrid camera. First of all, video features. I really, really like the R3D RAW codec. I am someone who has not traditionally shot RAW. I've got a Pixis 6K here. I've worked with some RAW footage, but never in a package that is so compact. And again, as someone who is like relatively new to filming in RAW, pretty blown away by the flexibility in terms of just adjusting my ISO and my white balance after the fact. It does make filming content when you're traveling on the go really, really nice and easy, because yes, I dial in a couple of settings, but other than that, I rely on my ND filter to just get close enough to the proper exposure. And then because I am filming in RAW, there's just a lot of flexibility and there's a lot of forgiveness, especially when you're kind of moving fast paced and you just want to get the shot. I really like that about this camera. And of course, there are other codecs available in here. You can still shoot in H.265, you've got N-Log. There are many different options, but at the moment, I've primarily been shooting in Red RAW, which again, probably comes to one of the downsides of the switch is memory use. With that said though, probably one of the more expensive investments I needed to make was the CF Express cards. I actually just went ahead and got a 2 terabyte CF Express Type B card, and it was plenty. I probably ran through about 1.5 gigs, maybe 2 gigs of B-roll and like just filming over the course of those weeks, backing it up onto a hard drive. But with a 2 terabyte kind of CF Express Type B card in here, I still didn't see too many issues, at least, you know, when compared to the normal 512 that I would use or a 256 that I would use in my A7CR. So that is one thing that I did have to consider. Honestly, now that I've got the card, I don't really care. Still got plenty of memory. I've got terabytes and terabytes of backup drives and NOS drives and SSD drives. It's fine. It is the price I'm willing to pay for the RAW video. And since we're talking about video quality with the ZR, I wanted to talk about how I approached this 2-week trip, kind of planning the different shots, all the different things that I wanted to get filmed. And that's where Artlist.io comes in, the sponsor of this video. So for me, when I'm planning a big trip and I've got content and shot lists and things that I want to film, I try to create a storyboard thanks to the advice of other incredible creators out there. So what I've been using a lot lately is Artlist AI image generation tools. And even better, they recently launched Nano Banana Pro. So for me, what I do is I use Artlist to create images for me, to just give me a mood board and like example shots of things that I should look out for and shots that I should get when I'm actually in region. So what's really cool is if you take a look here, I've actually got some shots that I generated. So for me, when I was in Hong Kong, I knew that I wanted to visit the harbor. So I had Nano Banana generate me some shots of like the ideal image, the ideal footage that I should get. And we've got the harbor here, we've got one of these boats in the background, and hopefully you can see I was actually able to get this shot when I was on the ferry. And the same goes for some of these cool night street shots. So Hong Kong is obviously very famous for these busy streets, lots of neon lights. And again, I had Nano Banana generate me some examples of the types of shots that I could get. And what you'll notice here too is Nano Banana Pro is so accurate when it comes to text in images in different languages. So this is actually a very accurate representation of the types of signs that you would see on the streets of Hong Kong. Like Chow Tai Fook is a very popular jewelry store that I saw everywhere in Hong Kong. And the fact that they were able to nail this, that is impressive, because normally if you've played with image generating tools, like font and text is always the like AI slop that you end up getting. And one more example I'll share with you is we were planning a visit to the garden by the bays. So I had it generate me some of the shots that I should get while I'm there. And you can see these beautiful light up structures that are there at the Garden of the Bay and give me an ideal shot getting the Marina Bay Sands building in the background. So as a content creator, again, like when I'm traveling for these big trips, I rely heavily on AI and image boards and just kind of planning ahead. And using Artlist.io, I'm able to do kind of all of that before I even get on the plane. So if you're interested, Artlist.io is running one of their biggest sales of the year. I think it's 40% off any of their AI packages and 20% off like their max AI bundle. Plus, if you use my code, you get an extra 2 months free with any of the annual plans. So definitely check it out, sign up. There's so many new features and upgrades that you would find worthwhile. All right, let's get back to the video. And that's the other thing that helped me cement this decision, especially after coming back from the trip and going through the videos and clips editing for this video, seeing the final product, seeing all the B-roll shots and all the different footage I was able to get in Red Raw with the post-production, the color grading, I'm really happy with it. I mean, I think all of this footage looks incredible. And again, I think because I was filming in Red Raw, yes, because I've also had a little bit of time to dial in my workflow with this, it felt very effortless to film. Like I didn't really have to second guess my settings or my exposure or anything like that. It felt perfectly fine for run and gun style shooting, which is exactly what I do when I travel. And the end result, I think, speaks for itself. Next, in terms of image quality, the photo mode. I think the photos also look incredible. It's really, really hard for me to tell these days because you can't go wrong with any camera you buy in 2025. Image quality is so subjective, I think, at this point, unless you are truly pixel peeping, unless you are really doing lab tests and, you know, Gerald and Dunn level stuff. I think image quality is just subjective at this point. Everything is razor sharp. Everything looks beautiful from any particular camera. So I wasn't surprised when I switched this into photo mode, which is nice because it's a little toggle switch, that the photos would look incredible. The only thing that I will say that did bother me is this doesn't have a mechanical shutter, which for the most part isn't a deal killer. But because I was shooting over in Asia and all these different countries where the power frequency is slightly different, yes, I was running into some problems with banding, but that's more or less user error. It's just me getting an idea of like, great, where do I need to set the shutter speed? What settings do I need to change on the camera to reduce banding? The Nikon does have some like anti-frequency, like fine tuning settings that you can do. It's whatever. It rarely came up, and when it did, it was fine because I got a few more shots that didn't have the banding. But that's one thing to keep in mind. With an electronic shutter, you are gonna pick up a lot more of that like banding, the rolling shutter, the movement, things where a mechanical shutter would naturally just eliminate. But even with those challenges, again, looking at the footage, looking at these photos, I still think they look fantastic and comparable. Again, I'm still using some of my favorite Sony lenses. So yeah, images coming out of the 35mm G Master look incredible. Everything is shot in RAW, so I still have all that control in post-production, in Lightroom. I can still change everything, add LUTs, do whatever I need. I think this thing is perfectly fine for my hybrid needs between video and photo, especially looking at the photos as I was editing them during and throughout the entire trip. Then let's talk about audio. A 32-bit float, internal recording, regardless of whatever mic you're using, yeah, that's valuable. As a content creator, I do use DJI mics. I've got the Mic 3s, I've got the Mic Minis, the Mic 2s. Sometimes I'm using some other shotgun mic, but at this point, it doesn't matter. Even if my Mic 3s record 32-bit float internally into the mic, I don't need to rely on that file because once I've got my Mic 3 receiver plugged into my ZR, anything that I record, whether or not I have the 32-bit float setting on the mics, it's gonna record the highest possible quality audio. And again, it goes back to that flexibility and speed that I find really valuable as a travel content creator. Turn on the camera, film, not worry too much about white balance or exposure. I mean, like, I still definitely dial it in. And then not having to worry about audio. not having to worry about my gain settings or peaking because regardless of the mic that I plug in, I'm still getting 32-bit float directly into the camera. With that said though, speaking of post-production, yes, working with RED RAW files is a whole different ballgame, especially for me. I'm not a professional. I am not an expert in RAW. I did my first editing in a RAW like workflow when I got the ZR. So now that I've kind of got it in a good place, it's a lot, but it's not too much, right? I still use Final Cut Pro because Final Cut Pro now supports Nikon's like R3D RAW codec. The process is just as simple as editing my Sony footage, right? I drop it in, it reads it. I have the extra settings now though. I can change ISO and white balance and all the individual elements of the RAW file, but applying the LUTs is the same. Applying my creative LUTs, applying my conversion LUTs, all the same, except the file sizes are massive. So my 4 terabyte like editing drives don't really cut it. I'm gonna get my hands on an 8 or maybe 16 terabyte editing drive, which yeah, like that's an additional investment, but that has nothing to do with the camera and the experience of filming with it at all. But I will say, yes, it has changed my editing workflow. Again, a price that I will gladly pay for being able to use this camera and the output and end result that I get from this camera. Things that I do miss about my A7CR that the ZR does not have. First of all, one way that I like to shoot when I'm on the go is I really leverage the kind of toggle and switches on top of the A7CR. So if you're familiar with the CR, it has a photo, a video, and then an S&Q mode. Now for each of those individual modes, you have 1, 2, 3 custom settings. So essentially you have 9 custom settings that you can really quickly switch to just using this kind of system at the top. That does not exist on the ZR. So we have 3 little custom buttons on top that I've kind of programmed each separately, but it is a bit of a pain switching between like a slow motion mode and a regular 24 FPS mode or a 30 FPS mode for social or whatever it is. Any of the different modes that I've already custom set on my ZR, it is not easy to do that on the Nikon ZR, which maybe Nikon can fix in a firmware update. But switching between photo and video, still super simple. I just wish there was a more tactile way to get between the modes like I have on my Sony. And then the other downside that I do miss about my Sony cameras in general is I personally like S&Q mode. Maybe that's like blasphemous to real filmmakers and content creators who just want to film everything in 60 FPS or 120 FPS and kind of slow it down in post. I'm, again, run and gun, shooting things. I don't like to think a lot when I'm trying to capture moments. I love S&Q mode. Being able to switch over to S&Q mode, get my custom settings dialed in with a simple, turn of this toggle, and then just film slow motion that I can drop directly into Final Cut Pro is incredible. I like that a lot. Not available on Nikon, not available on the ZR. So I do have a 60 FPS mode that I can film in, and then when I drop it in, I need to just slow it down to the proper speed to get that slow motion. An extra step, totally fine. I just don't find myself switching over to that mode very often or doing much slow motion in the field when I'm using this. With that said though, what I have enjoyed is the stabilization on the ZR. So one of the reasons why I haven't found the need to swap over to a 60 FPS mode on this is because even in the standard, like I shoot in 24 frames per second, even with that, getting really smooth panning motions and movements with the stabilization, even with the Sony lenses, I think it looks just as good. So I still get really solid smooth footage that could come off as smooth as say like a 60 frame per second pan or tilt. So I haven't found myself needing it. Again, I would love if Nikon could add that again through a firmware update, but I'm probably the only one. I like S&Q modes. I don't really hear about other people enjoying them as much as I do. All right, so with all that said, I mean, yes, the ZR does have its quirks, very much like my A7CR, because of the extensive testing and the fact that I forced myself to only travel with this as my main camera in a different country with no other backups, I really, really like this. I think it works perfectly with my type of shooting, my style of filming and photography. The cons are definitely worth all the pros, and because of that, as I mentioned, it's not clickbait. I'm gonna be selling my A7CR. I just don't need it anymore as a hybrid travel camera. This thing is gonna be coming with me everywhere. Doesn't mean I'm abandoning the Sony ecosystem. Like the FX3, it's still here. I've still got a ZV-E1 that I leave around the office for overhead shots. But if I'm gonna grab anything to catch a flight, to go on location, to do whatever, this right here, the Nikon ZR, this is what I'm gonna bring. All right, if you guys like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more videos just like this. I'm gonna do more examples on the ZR and show you a lot more footage in the future, but I will catch y'all in the next one.